Yeah. So it's really, it's been, and I just like, oh, wow. Now I have all of these feelings to process. It's like,
The feelings of, I mean, because so many things happened. I mean, so many things happened while we were kind of in lockdown. They shut the world down, and it was just like, what were they up to while we were all locked up? I mean, I did go have those feelings, like, but getting,
mhm.
doesn't, it's not that paranoid. I mean, it's a lot of weird shit like slid through the, while we were asleep. They did some terrible things to us, but and here we are now, and it's an opportunity. I think people, it was also the positive thing that happened was people just honing in. You really got to see, for me, I got divorced out of it like last year. But you've got to really, get real with yourself and what we're going to be doing in this world and the way you want to live. And I feel really horrible how we've left this planet. My generation has left this planet to my daughter and the next generations. It's pretty horrendous. It's a huge mess. But I have to tell you, the hope that I have are these young people who are so much smarter than me, you, or anybody that we like. They are smart. The evolved, climate activists, justice activists and the young people are just, I look to them.
Mm.
They can't learn anything from me. I screwed it all. I'm one of the people, unfortunately, that,
Okay. So before we go there, I want to go back to you
okay.
as a child.
Oh, okay, great.
I want to go back to you as a child. I want to talk about your beginnings. When did your activism begin? Because
Oh,
if I have this correctly, you were a little naked child marching with Martin Luther King and running around Woodstock, like, an adorable cherubic little,
no, I wasn't.
flower child.
I had a mother. I had parents who were activists. I had especially an incredible mother. So everybody in the Arquette family is, that's just, service is part of our DNA. It was instilled in us, you know. I mean, there were times like, look, I'm a lot older than the rest of the kids. So there was a period, I didn't live with them. I left home really early. But anyway, let's go early. Let's see. So my mother she believed she wanted to, because I was born in 59. She wanted to, we lived in New York. I was born in New York, integrate a school. So she brought me to Harlem to this nursery school that was an all Black nursery school. And I was the only white child. And that was really important to her. And I'm telling you that is in my bones. That's in
Mhm.
my soul. Having that experience, that all I can tell you is I actually don't, I just remember the feeling of it and the beautiful children, that were my friends. And so it's a community that I feel really at home in and always have.
Mhm.
So when the Black Lives Matter movement happened, it's hello, the civil rights movement was, my mother was incredibly involved with and worked in the Rainbow Kitchen um uh in Chicago, because we had moved to Chicago. And so there were a lot of Levin's pieces daily. The mayor was creepy in those days. And so there was a lot of marches. And I know my mother was one of the organizers. I should bring my computer to something to show you. One of the organizers for an anti-war march that was happening, or a sit-in. But it was a march, and then it was going to go sit in the park in Lincoln Park. And Martin Luther King came. So I just remember this experience. And I've told this story many times, but I was in the back of a truck with him. He came in this time. He showed up. I don't know, well, like, if he was in town for something else, but he did come to this march or be a part of it. And I was in this back of this truck with him, and my mother had painted "Stop the War, Kill No More" on my chest. And he asked my name, and then this is what he said. Someone put a shirt on that little girl. That was what I got from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who was such a beautiful human being, man. And I have significant memory of my mother when it was announced. I think I was watching like The Flying Nun or something. We were in Chicago, and it stopped that he had been shot and killed. And I will never forget my mother just she was on her knees pounding the ground and sobbing and saying, they killed him. Those motherfuckers killed him. Like, she just knew he was, obviously he was assassinated by horrible people. And we're still dealing with that we're still even dealing with this now more than ever. And it's even worse. It's so horrible. Although the marching that, our mothers did, my mother did for women's rights. I mean, it's been brutal time. Anyway.
So I'm going to do the thing and do. So we're here with a woman who needs no introduction, Rosanna Arquette. You're an actor, you're an activist, a director. We're here talking in the context of a climate zine we're doing called Fogtown, which actually takes place in two worlds. Part of it is there's a fictional world called Fogtown, which is sort of imagines if the climate emergency the climate emergency is now, but the world we're looking at inevitably when we hit a 2-degree increase.
What our children are
exactly. So we're imagining with that now, and then also what communities like the favelas in Brazil or the communities in Mumbai, are experiencing.
Keep cutting down our trees. Keep
exactly.
cutting down the Earth's oxygen. I mean, just like for oil.
That's right.
So horrible.
But I'm curious, like you're a director, you're an actor. I want to hear though, like, what is your feeling on like the role of and the power of storytelling in this fight for the future right now?
Well, I mean, I always felt like, art, music, film can save lives. It's like it's one person, if it touches you and you get impacted in a way that can creating change in the world, it's a good thing. And I think a lot that's what we're losing too, is with the AI stuff. It looks like, we're even losing the soul of art, which they're trying to do. Let's get rid of the writers. A writer's strike is about to happen in my businesses, and that's it's going to have a huge impact because they want to get rid of those big overall deals and had computer, you can put in a computer. So a friend of mine just put in some prompts about me, and it was just like, it was so wild how fast it came out. And in some areas, it knew me, it knew the activism, it knew it was so bizarre, very fast. And that's kind of frightening because they're trying to replace machines with soul, and they'll never have a soul ever.
Mm-hmm. We certainly do seem to be hitting an inflection point right now. I think it is one of those inflection point moments with AI. And I don't know. I don't know if this movie ever ends well. I mean, I feel like we know how this movie is going to end, but I'm curious about you talk about
is it just going to end with now that everybody's like literally playing with nuclear war heads, pressing the button, and they're so itching to do that. I mean, it's just could care less. I mean, it's just like you've got China, Saudi Arabia, America, like all the North Korea. I mean, it's pretty scary. And I guess what we have to do, what I've learned in all this is like, and it's taken a while because I have to say, so super, active on Twitter and all the information daily coming all day with, and trolls and Nazi trolls and racist, misogynist pig trolls and dealing with this. And then with this last election, I got off Twitter purposely, first of all, once he bought it and turned it into, it was clear that the agenda was
Elon Musk.
Yeah, as soon as that happened, it was very clear that the agenda was to dismantle democracy and take away the voice of the town square of all of us. Had we, the Me Too movement wouldn't have happened if we didn't have Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
It happened on Twitter.
So
That's how it happened.
Speaking of which,
and yeah,
you were at the absolute tip of the spear as a survivor. Where I also want to get to is I remember at one point you were linking Me Too and climate change, which is so interesting. Is such a such a high level narrative to weave is wonderful. So that's why I'm just giving you a spoiler alert. That's where I'm headed. But I'm curious, just talking about your work and how Me Too and your work, you directed the documentary, The Searching for Deborah Winger. You were really miles ahead in this conversation. But
yeah, Searching for Deborah Winger is was it 12, 15 years? That's a long time. 20 years ago? Yeah, it's 20. Oh my gosh, it's 22 years. 22 years ago.
Wow.
My daughter was, I think, 6 at the time. Yeah. 22 years ago.
So basically, so you were really, you were one of the first you were behind the scenes as this was, this movement was, ready to ignite. How do you think
I wanted to have a conversation with the movie. I wanted to have a conversation with women about, so we did touch on these things, in a women's group of dinners and stuff that we had, like Melanie Griffith's house and one at Russian Tea Room with Ali Sheedy and Shelley, Adrian Shelley, who's no longer with us, but just conversations about sexual harassment and stuff that happened. So that was 22 years ago, a long time bringing that stuff up. But we're also, what was I going to say? Oh, the Me Too. Well, it was about the Harvey Weinstein stuff. So yes, I was close with Ronan Farrow and, in terms of became close with him because of all this. And yeah, so, and then
how is that though changed?
Forget that Tarana Burke, a lot of people tried to hijack this whole thing, including, Hollywood agents and shit. It was crazy, how they just wanted to be in this narrative that didn't even happen to them. And it was what is happening here? So you could see they were monetizing the whole thing. And that was awful. But, the Me Too movement is Tarana Burke. And that's what Tarana Burke created this years ago, 25 years ago. And she had women's groups and, in support groups in the basement for survivors and turned it into Me Too stories. And that's how that happened. So, people kind of just jumped on that and kind of, thank God it got cleared up. But for a minute, it was it was her slogan. So it was very, very important to me, to give her cred, which I always did from day one. And
not everyone did.
And what?
Not everyone did.
It was
right out of the gate.
Anytime I saw her, I talked about it. Like the first time Sharon Waxman had her first summit. She does a women's summit that's really great and brings all these fantastic women together and voices, and there's talks, and it's like a convention. It's really cool. And the first one, she had Tarana Burke. So I hadn't met her yet, but I was really clear, no, everybody, Tarana Burke's, the Me Too movement is Tarana Burke's movement. And we just, is it a shame that it took a bunch of white actresses to, get it to the surface when all, the Cosby woman had already come out. I mean, there's, it's been reported, these kinds of sexual harassment in workplaces had been reported a lot. And it just happened that the timing that we came out and talked about it, and believe me, it's a big price to pay, to pay having done it. Because a lot of people do not like that and protected him, still protect many predators that are still out there, you know, doing their thing, and they look the other way and they don't care. It's really horrible. And one of the things that, you know, that Twitter enabled us all to connect to each other across the world with strangers, that this had happened to us, it was huge. And they were, you know, misogynistic men and people in power hated it. And then is there, you know, I often wonder, is this backlash that we're seeing, that they were so threatened by powerful women coming forward in their stories, that it's like it just went to the worst place you could possibly imagine, which is like taking away our rights, as, you know, my daughter's right to have an abortion if she chooses, for her body, and that's the right thing for her life. Like, what are they setting up? It's just not even equipped. And then, you know, no one's equipped for this, and I think it's going to bite them horribly. I really have faith that it's just not going to be good.
I think in part you also see that this is actually tied directly to oil barons like the Koch brothers and their network of dark money groups, who actually strategically have found, like, okay, there's no one, they recognize there's no one who would in their right mind support us. So they've had to cobble together a coalition of right-wing nationalist theocrats. So basically they've had to go to the church people because they found wedge issues. Like, how can we find a wedge issue that divides people? And so that's become one of their bases. It's gun people and the sort of religious Christian, they're fake Christians, but Christian zealots.
Yeah, anybody who, I mean, Jesus, if you're a real Christian, taught love. I mean, like, you know, the Reverend Martin Luther King, you have, you know, the bishop who I love so much,
Tutu? Desmond Tutu?
No, but also in America, and he is the Poor People's Campaign.
Oh, Reverend Barber.
I love it, and I've been arrested with him, you know, in DC. And please, because I know him and I love him, and it's just my brain is not.
Yeah, he's wonderful.
Remembering people's names.
And Reverend Theo Harris, Liz Theo Harris.
Both of them, huh? Both
yeah,
of them.
and Reverend Theo Harris, yeah.
Yes, they're incredible, and what they do. So, what kind of Christianity is this, where they worship the gun and violence, and it's okay to shoot somebody, a kid who's gone to the wrong door, in the head? I mean, why? Because they were Black? Like, what is happening? Yeah. This is a horrible country right now. I mean, it is. And I really, God bless America always. And I believe, you know, in democracy, but the way it's going right now, this is just, until there's going to be a revolution. And I do believe that it's going to come from the young people who are really smart, and the climate justice activists that are in their 20s are just powerhouses. Like, I can learn so much from them. Like, I don't know anything compared to these kids. I feel hopeful because of them. And they're the voters. They're the voters, folks. Watch out. Watch out.
Yeah, I think the challenge becomes, how do we keep it from going over the cliff long enough for them to take over and, you know, and build power? But actually, I want to hear how you
look at this, the two Justins in Nashville, you know, like that just happened, where they were voted out and they're coming back in. It's like, no, the voice of the people will be heard. I love those guys.
But how did you link the Me Too movement and the fight for climate justice? That this is fascinating to me. This was such an amazing sort of thread to weave together.
Well, it was because Mother Earth is being raped, and like literally we're raping her. We're raping her, and she's trying to survive in this trauma. And I feel like that's what's happening to, you know, that's what happens in terms of people who've been sexually assaulted in and the trauma that comes along with it, the choices they make through the years. Well, it's the soul core wound, and I feel like we're doing that to the earth. That's what we've been doing to her. We're just not respecting her, like just treating her like like an animal, like not like an animal. You don't treat an animal like in a good way. Treating her, that's the worst analogy. Or just no respect for her. And
like
I
a
don't even
commodity
know.
that we can just consume at will and devastate and decimate. And so
Yeah,
you're
and
saying
she
that so you're saying that the
still
patriot,
standing right
it's
now.
emblematic of like of the broader patriarchy that is both um attacking women directly, raping women directly, and then this becomes part of the bigger paradigm where mankind is raping our mother earth, essentially.
Yeah, yeah, it has. I wish I could. I have all my notes on that.
Well,
Like a
there's a
long time
great,
ago.
if people Google the rap, there's a great article I think you wrote on that.
Yeah. That's
So,
what it was.
so
And
it's
I feel like that was a long time ago. And I don't know. I feel like for me, it's just been such a chaotic, intense, painful, weird year of like moving out of houses. Speak about climate change. When I was fortunate when I was really young and I worked a lot and my dream was to have a house in Big Sur, California.
Hmm.
And I loved Big Sur. And so I got to buy this house, cash, across next door to the Post Ranch, across the street from Ventana. And what climate change has done, these storms that just happened, I just had to sell it. And it went through, like right before Valentine's Day. And it was just the most brutal thing I've ever done because this house really represented me, like everything. But great things came from that house. And that was one great thing that happened was this road trip will be, I guess, was it 4 years ago, 5 years ago, that Jane Fonda, Catherine Keener, and I took, and we went to Big Sur for 5 days, and that became the birth of Fire Drill Fridays. She was like reading this Naomi Klein book, and you could see her world spinning, her thoughts, like she needed to do something. She was like, we must do something. What can I do? Keener said, what can I do? And that became the title of her book that she wrote, which is all about that. But it all came in this house. And I have her, I think I filmed her on my iPhone talking to Annie at Green Street, Annie Leonard at Greenpeace, Annie Leonard, and all these, her putting it together to go to Washington, D.C. And she parked herself there for, I don't know, was she there 6-8 months? A long time. And everybody came and joined her. We got arrested. I did it twice with her there. And anyway, the Big Sur is now like crumbling, the roads, you can't get to it because the mudslides. It's like, it's become like an island, and this magical paradise is Mother Earth's pissed. And the sacred space is like, it's saying, no more, high-tech people. Like, in fact, I think it was 2 big high-tech people, Jack at Twitter had a big, beautiful house there, burnt down in the fire. It's like
I think Frank, oh God, what's his name? There's a really famous right-wing narrative guy who Frank
I know names, right?
You know what I'm talking about. He's the person that actually had us go from global warming to saying climate change because it was less scary than global warming. But he's sort of a right-wing strategist, and his house, he actually now has come over to the climate movement because his house burned down in the Thomas fire. He's like, wow, I really but what is it going to take? Do you think, is it going to take people being affected directly,
I think it's going
to
to take
finally
their
wake up to this? Like,
grandchildren
what's it going to take
dying from like,
humanity to wake up?
yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're okay. Frank Luntz. Frank Luntz.
Keep going. Because because I'm so
no, just roll with it.
A thought in my head is like I blurted out. It's terrible because I forget. I'll like it's like I'll lose the train of thought, but we're in a time where I do believe that the power of, I mean, the love stuff has gotten, like, what was great about the 60s and the way I grew up was there was peace, love, and, peace and love, like that was part of the energy that everybody got into. And you can even see it from the first Woodstock to the Woodstock where it ended, one of the last ones, in fires, and like 10 women had gotten raped. I mean, it was like the violence that us as human beings, how we've evolved into that. Like that said so much to me. It was like, what is going on? That really freaked me out. And that was years ago.
99. I think that was 99.
Ah.
But the difference, what was the difference? The difference was the first Woodstock, they sort of, at a certain point, they said, okay, let's just open it to everybody. And so it was a much more, you might say, socialistic experience.
Yeah.
99 was completely
corporate.
Like mercenary corporate capitalist.
Sick.
And you see the thing just evolve into the Lord of the Flies.
Example. We were in Standing Rock together, right? Yeah. Because my sister was there, doing her biodegradable toilets that work like in that way, which are pretty incredible. And I went there with a group of women, and I had this moment there of the feeling of everybody coming together for this, that this was wrong, what they're doing. They're raping the land. And, these are the water protectors, and all these people coming to support them. But then, then there were like the people that were, trying to move on in there and wreak havoc from within, which were pretending like they were activists. But
infiltrators, yeah. They were actual
that was
corporate
happening.
Mercenaries that had infiltrated.
It was terrifying. But the moments that I had, like when the full moon, and I stumbled upon this, I just started walking. I stumbled upon this LGBTQI tribe that were all in the LGBTQIA community, Native Americans that were there, Indigenous people. And it was like, Alexis had just died in September. It was November afterwards. And so this is like 6 years ago. And I just remember like this feeling. I went to Patricia and I said, you got to come back with me to these. They were medicine women that were there that did a blessing under the moon and stuff for Alexis. It was really powerful. And I just remember this is the feeling that we had in my childhood. Like this, I wanted her, she's like, worker bee working, and have this moment with these medicine women. Let's say a prayer and like figure, this is all good, what's happening, the good energy of what they were trying to do.
Yeah, it's shocking to me that a lot of people don't know. So
can be bought, so many people can be bought, and it's shocking the people that can.
If people don't know, Standing Rock was a fight in Standing Rock, North Dakota, where 500 tribes and over 10,000 people came from all over the world. It was Black Lives Matter. People came from Palestine. The Norwegian Indigenous people, called the Sami people came, and of course there were all these activists and cultural influencers. A lot of them came from like Bernie Sanders surrogate supporters was a strong core of us who came, and we faced off against Mark Ruffalo, who's such a mensch. And we're facing off against literally the government and the oil company, government agencies, and this oil corporation working together, hiring Blackwater mercenaries called Tiger Swan to basically, they were using the same tactics that in the reports, the leaked reports, they used the same tactics they used against the Taliban. I'm not sorry, the Taliban. Yeah, against the Taliban in Afghanistan, treating us like the Taliban, even though we were unarmed, peaceful protectors. But I'm actually curious. For me, that was, I think, an important moment for our movements that made them prayerful, because I think a lot of activism, especially sort of left-wing activism, spirituality, I think for decades has not been a part of it, but I'm actually curious as to what role spirituality plays in your activism and in your journey.
Oh, it's full on part of who I am. I mean, I kind of grew up, I do believe in almighty, powerful energy that I would say love and kindness and these kinds of things that not always, I can't always be in that space because I'm not a saint, but a lot of people, I believe in a higher power than me, and I say the word God, but it's just an energy of love, really, ultimately. And you can feel, I've always been an empath and pretty psychic, so you can feel dark energy when it's around. I can feel like an energy that's not okay or around someone or in someone, and I know when I open myself up to that energy, that even for a role that seems dark or like trying to explore why someone thinks that way, it affects me. It's one of the reasons I had to end up got off Twitter too, is like there's so much darkness, not just like we need to know what's going on in the world, of course, and I do, but I didn't need to it's like this is not moving the needle. I mean, everybody's busting their asses and they just don't give a shit. Not to give up, but to find another way. And I think that's what we got to learn from the young people who are figuring it out and follow them, because I think they're so much smarter than we ever were.
Yeah. So Fogtown, part of that universe follows that there's a story that goes through this climate zine we're doing. And it's part of a bigger story that we're telling, but it follows a young Indigenous, like Meso-Indigenous woman who is caught between these two worlds. And part of it is, she's she just wants to go and hang out with people. Her community is being poisoned. And she wants to join this kind of cool young teenage bicycle gang. But meanwhile, she has this inner awakening of this sort of ancestral magic, and the voice of Mother Nature talking to her. I'm curious, like, how does that connection to Mother Nature, to spirit, inform your process?
Well, like I really need to be, as much as I can, be in nature if I can, and just, I'm telling you, it sounds like people go, it's a tree hugger. It's like, yeah, man, have you ever hugged a tree?
It's great. It's so
you can
great.
feel the energy, and that is why someone like Julia Butterfly, who lived up in the redwood tree for 2.5 years, while they tried to, a friend of mine is making that movie. It's going to be so amazing. She lived up in that tree, this beautiful tree, and the tree was like, the sap would cry, and she was so in tune with this tree. And for years, and she lived up on huge, and people would bring her food for 2.5 years, and helicopters, they just tried to saw her down.
They get these huge helicopters trying to get her out of they would fly down these massive helicopters to
she killed her. They didn't give a shit.
It's crazy.
She was holding on to that tree. Yeah. And this tree, I don't know if you ever read that book, but the tree, I mean, it is a living, that for me taught me to hug trees. Like, if I feel like I need to be grounded or something, find some place and just go and get next to like the energy of a tree. It's pretty amazing that we, that exists, and then to be in tune with that. I've always had it sounds so airy-fairy, but connect, I literally saw my daughter almost died years ago from Odwalla apple juice from E. coli, and it was in there, and it was horrible and scary, and I just thought, if I could breastfeed this sounds crazy, but it really happened. I cannot believe this happened. I had a miracle. I had a real miracle moment. I'd stopped breastfeeding her and she was 2, like at 17, 18 months. So at 2, she got very sick. I had to do a movie for a few days and I came back. I thought we had the flu and I couldn't even, I was not able to work because my kid was sick. And so I told him, I said, you gotta change the schedule. I gotta get back. So I did. And she started getting sicker and sicker, and it ended up being E. coli where she had total kidney failure. It was really dangerous. She's okay now, but it was horrible. And I just had this vision and I saw these 8 gigantic, they were huge. This sounds so crazy, but like I saw these 8 gigantic angels, women. They were all women. They were like 8 or 10 feet tall. And one of them was holding her above her. So she was leaving her body, and they kind of put her back into her body. And my mom, who died 6 months later, I said, Mom, like I just had, I told her, like she was with me. We're in the hospital kind of meditating. That's what we were doing. And I had that vision. And apparently during it, she was getting dialysis, and she said, I want to watch Beauty and the Beach, the Beauty and the Beast, the Cocteau one, because I had shown her, I said, this is the Disney one, this is the Cocteau one at 2, and she knew. Like she knew it because it was so visually amazing, and like the hands, coming out. Anyway, and that was very sweet. That was kind of a funny thing that she said, the Cocteau one. And then so yeah, I feel connected to something that's definitely energy of light. I know the difference between light and dark, and the feeling of it energetically for myself. I don't know what it is for anybody else. I can only speak for myself. And for me, I can tell the difference. And I got to tell you, we're really in a dark place, right? Energetically in this world right now, when you have it okay to like, what we're seeing in Texas, what we're seeing with the Satan in Florida, what we're just this
I'm assuming you mean
taking away our
DeSantis.
rights. I call him Satan. Sorry,
The Satan.
Yeah. I mean, can't say gay. You're kidding me, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's
what?
crazy.
I mean, and then I just, I had gone to a dinner recently with these people who were saying like, like I was shocked. I was like, how people like, what in the world are you thinking? And, I've always considered myself a pretty open person and allow people to have their opinions and stuff, but like, no, I don't want to hang with people who think that way. I'm sorry. I just don't. Because to me, it's like the difference between love and light and hate and dark. It's like these people who are implementing these insane laws on human beings in America and Americans are, it's like a dark energy. There's just, it's awful. I don't want to be around it.
So talk to me about like in this, we're definitely a very anthropomorphic species, obviously. It's in our it's very deeply rooted in our Western mythos, especially the Christian stories, the Judeo-Christian stories talking about how man has dominion over the earth, and it's very kind of intertwined in that. But talk to me about Big Heart Ranch and why is it personal to you to fight for animals?
Hold on. So wait a minute. I didn't even know. Do you know all about that? Big Heart Ranch?
I mean, I
Big
do a
Heart
little.
Ranch. It's not there. It's not. It doesn't exist in the way that it did, unfortunately, because they got rid of one of the most incredible human beings, and who was running it with her daughter. But something happened. Like it was a powerful force for saving animals, and also bringing in kids who, from inner city kids to be able to experience being around animals, and would have these camps and labs.
So can you just talk about the power of that? Like, what is the power of that?
Really
What is
important.
the
It
import?
doesn't exist anymore. Unfortunately, it's really sad because Susie
Mm,
Landolfi, who's this extraordinary woman, was who, you know, she rescues horses, and she's a trauma expert for, you know, survivors, and for
mhm.
she's drug counseling, and for you know, I met her through a group of people, and we've become great friends, and so I was involved with. I really loved that place so much, but they end up yes, they
Why,
want to turn it into a wedding venue or something.
why was that important to
So
you though? Because I think in this whole process, we forget about man-made climate disasters, how is it going to impact human beings, which is obviously essential. But I think we also forget about how it is going to impact what our indigenous family calls like our four-legged family, our four-legged relatives. Um, but I'm curious as like you personally, like what is this? Why is this personal to you? Like the to stand for the rights of humans, but also um, those who can't fight for themselves, which is our animal relatives.
yeah, well, I mean, I always did have that poster growing up, which was like war is not healthy for children and other living things, which is animals and plants, and you know, and you know, our oceans. The ocean is a living thing, and we're just poisoning it every day. But why is it important? Because um I don't know, I'm a human being on this planet, and I want it to be the best it can be for all of us to survive and thrive and live in a good place. I've never felt this kind of hopelessness before.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've never felt this ever. And it started setting in, and I was like, oh no, 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 no. Like that, I don't want to go there. I don't want to spiral into the energy of that, because I think it's part of something that is happening with these big corporations. It's energetically, that's the energy that works to keep it going like that. So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like you have to, the war, because I'm not without guns, is fighting against that in our heads. Like, no, like we have to hone into the spiritual truth within ourselves, as many people that can join hands in that energy as much as we can. I really believe it's powerful, and maybe I'm naive. I guess I am in some ways, but I do believe it's powerful.
So
Continue on.
how do you find joy in the midst of even in those moments? I mean, what I'm hearing you say is sort of not allowing us to lose the fight and lose the fight for the future in our own minds and in our own hearts. So how do you and I, by the way, I
Let's not
feel it too.
let's not lose the fight for light, I would say.
Nice.
Let's
So
not
the
lose the
fight, so
fight
the
for
fight for light,
the fight for light.
how do you find that? How do you maintain that connection in the face of such calamity? How do you personally what do you do to maintain joy in this really difficult time?
It's so the timing of this, like, you know, I ended up, my marriage just crumbled in a horrible way, and weirdly and strange, and I just now have so I've really been alone for the last 16 months. In a way, and I've inherited my grand cat, my daughter's cat, because she's traveling all over. She can't take care of the cat, so I have the cat. Plus, I do have two dogs, but they're over in another house, so I don't get to see them as much as I'd like. But I think the isolation, being by myself, having really incredible women friends, because my women friends have been powerful, great support, and really being okay alone, which I think was very important to me, for me, for my own personal growth, and like not needing, like I just don't, certainly don't need a man to make me happy. And that there's a certain sadness that comes along with that, but all my powerful, incredible girlfriends are alone. Like they're done. Like with this, and not to say they don't want love in their lives, and that's not to say we're not open or we'll have it. And but just like to actually be really super okay, and like if this is it, I'm good. And simplifying everything. I'm definitely, I've loved designer shoes and shit like that. Like I definitely had beautiful things and material things and all those things. I lived a certain lifestyle. I worked really hard, had it, spent it, lived in a certain way. And all those things right now, getting down to the basics, just like gave everything away and living in a more simple way that's really great for me. So that I'm able to just have the freedom, except, finding the good cat sitter, to to do things like that. Like Jane called a couple of years ago. We went to the pipeline up in Minnesota. That was gnarly. And then these people went after us to try to, have a federal case against us, but they ended up being finished with. But it was a little scary there that we had the chance of going to jail. And we did we trespassed on their land. And
Well,
so when they said to me, when they said that to me, I was like, but no, I'm there because you're trespassing.
is it? Yeah. Is it their land though?
You guys are trespassing on this land, this indigenous land that is their land.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. But anyway,
what was that like though?
I can never go there again. So
what was it like? Yeah, it was. I don't think people really can understand if you weren't there what it was like. But what was it like for you to get, to actually put your body on the line and get arrested with Jane and others? What was that like for you?
Oh, that was in DC.
Mhm.
In DC, that was twice up in DC. It was incredible.
Because for
It
some
was
people, it may
incredible.
be scary, like, oh my God,
It
like,
was
go to
scary. No,
jail.
It was like, it's not a joke. I mean, Jane, she kept going. So like she got arrested and she spent the night in jail, and we picked her up in the morning, and she was like, been up all night, that, roaches were everywhere. It was really, she talked with the other women. She's such a badass, man. There's no way like her. And I was blessed to have met her when I was 20, her and Tom Hayden.
Mhm.
They kind of seeked me out at the time. I was whatever young actress, A-list girl or something.
Doing a little movie called Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, no, that's way before that. Way
Oh,
before
way
that.
before that. Okay.
Years ago. I was 20 something. Like I was really young, and they wanted me to be a part of, I think she put together Young Women, Young Hollywood United or something. But I met Tom and Jane, and I would go with them to Sacramento. And they had a campaign that we did up the state of California for Prop 65. I think it was this is years ago, which was the pollution that was like the chemicals and the pesticides that were going into our water that we were ingesting. So it was a whole bus tour up the state of California to, register kids, everybody to vote at colleges, and say, no, and explain to everybody what it was. But who was on that bus was Ali Sheedy. I met Laura Dern. She was 19.
Mhm.
So that's how old, whatever she is now, that's how old. And we're still very, very close friends. Allie, there was Ed Bagley, Daphne Zuniga. Like it was just this whole group of young Hollywood, and Whoopi was on that trip. And it was how important to use your voice, which was the lesson, when you have a platform, if you have a platform, we're very blessed to be able to go do our work, but then if you have an audience and you can use it for good, and great. Like, yeah, that's what
What
it's
would you
for.
say to your, what would you say
More
to
for
your
that than to get a
colleagues?
good table at a restaurant. Huh?
What would you say to your colleagues who are on the bench right now, who have not yet come to use their platform to speak up for the people in the planet and those who can't speak for themselves? What would you say to them?
So I used to have, there's some powerful women who've come forward to me and told me of their experiences. They'll never come out about it. And you know what? I felt very blessed that they trusted me, and no one would ever know that. But that was enough for them. They didn't have to do it publicly, and it is a huge, horrible thing to do to yourself. Let me tell you, if you're in this industry, they just don't want that.
Mm.
But I know a lot of people who, are huge, huge movie stars, and they just they don't want to get political. They just want to have their careers. And you know what? More power to them. I think it's okay. I think it's okay. We can't be judgmental of what anybody wants to do. It's definitely, you take a chance in your life and career. People put you in a blacklist because of your views. I mean, it does happen. Oh, well, she thinks she doesn't like this Satan, so so that's where I don't know, but whatever. But so it's a choice, and that's okay. I'm not going to judge somebody for not doing that.
Is there
That's the way they-
what if we were to take judgment out, where so it's not coming from a judgmental, but more from a, say, like an encouraging or enrolling place, if they might not feel empowered to do that, or what I experience a lot is sort of the management, the business people behind are the ones putting the pressure on to stay apolitical.
Well,
it's
they're
not in
also
every
being
case,
funded. They're being funded by the big corporations. You see who's funding all the creative art world, the film industry, music. Look who owns them. Look who the corporations come in, and what are their politics. You can see it right there. You can see, I don't want to mention the names, because
Sure.
you don't need to. You just look and see and can figure it out for yourself. And yeah, they have an agenda. And it's to now that art was the freedom, the art form, like making a movie or music, that was where the creative expression, and you did touch people in the movie theaters. Like, people could be touched by that movie, really changed my life when you played that, like that can happen. But now it's changing. I don't know. I personally love the little small movies that nobody ever wants to see. I do a lot of those. So, but yeah.
So last question. It is such a trying time right now. You have literally been part of these movements for your whole life, literally. I came to it much later. I mean, I started community organizing in 2001, post 9/11, but really Occupy was sort of the first moment for me that I got into this type of justice organizing. But
did you see me down there? Did we see each other down there?
I don't know if we ran into, I mean, I was there every day, but I'm not sure if we ran into each other there. I remember I brought Marla Maples there. So like, I just kept trying to bring people in. I know it's nuts. I
ended up being with a businessman, like in the early, like where I was down there, and he was like, "You're at Occupy Wall Street, and I invest and I do this stuff." It's like, I said, "Yeah, that's how I was raised." And it was like, I should have known there that was an issue, gonna be an issue. But it was downtown. People were living in tents. My mother would have been living down there in a tent in Occupy.
You can't really, there's no way to understand unless you were there. That's part of
Yeah.
the thing I hope people take away is, in an age where we're all, at capitalism has had us become atomized. That means that we're, individually. There's a reason why. Oh, hi, Kitty. There's a reason why Amazon is the most successful company in the world. It's because we have been separated. We've been divided so that we're attached to a screen by ourselves in our house, trapped. And then we don't experience what it's like to come together as a community. How much power we have coming together as a community. Like you can't know what it's like unless you experience it. But I want to know, like, what is your advice to people who may feel alone, who may feel trapped, who may feel desperate, in this time where we're seeing like our society really like crumble before our eyes due to the climate emergency, due to late stage capitalism, white supremacy. What advice would you have to young people now, or people in general who are just generally freaked out?
You ever heard of this guy, Howard Wills? He's a healer in Hawaii. And he just has these very simple prayers. And I mean, I say them every day. It's called the Transformational Concise Prayer Program. But the first one is a personal cleansing prayer. And you don't have to use the word God. You could use love or higher power or whatever, whoever. But it does say God, but it can be anything. Lord, God, whatever, Buddha, whatever you want. God, please help me forgive all people. All people forgive me. Help us all forgive ourselves. Please, God. Thank you, God. Amen. Thank you, God. Amen. And that's the personal cleansing. You just say it over and over and over and over and over again. And it does some kind of frequency to clear energy, toxic energy that's at you. But it's like is it easy to forgive someone who's shot your child in the head because they came to the wrong door? No. Like, how do you ever fucking do that? Like, how do I forgive Nazis who are like, here more than ever, and the white supremacy that's just taken hold so much. It's always been there. But of course, when we all experienced the George Floyd being, murdered, the breath out of him for 8.5, 9 minutes, and the whole world saw that. Like, it fueled action. And then you saw how the response was from the White House at the time, psychos in the White House, that, suddenly it was like the difference between what the White House was then with, like, barbed wire, and you couldn't get close to it. And I have a great picture with the Keener. We went out one night when we had gotten arrested, and how DC had just, they were so afraid of any of these movements. They were so afraid. So that they had these guys that weren't even our military. Like, who are these guys that showed up? Like, those were the MAGA force that came with these
Brown
big
shirts.
guns, and they got permission. Yeah, what?
Brown shirts.
What?
In
Yes.
Nazi Germany, they were called the brown shirts. They were the citizens, the private citizens who became paramilitary supporters of the fascists.
Yeah. And they brought him in, and they were standing there, like, and by the way, they were ones, there was no Black Lives Matter marches through Los Angeles, and we were all in the streets. And this was in the height of COVID isolation time. Like, we were on the streets and people were afraid. They set up people, they set it up. There was like high, there were bricks that were just planted in the middle, like high in the middle of the site. Did you ever run across it? That was in Santa Monica. Yeah. So they were like, somebody set up.
There were people who, to my eye, seeing the video footage, were clearly agent provocateurs who were pros. Yes. There were people who showed up in cars. They were tactical. They had backpacks. They were in and out. They set a cop car on fire. They were white people.
I think they paid people to do it too.
I'd say people like some people, someone like, I would say in my mind, I would say someone like Eric Prince is advising the Trump White House that this is how you're this is actually that was how Nixon, that was Nixon's whole reelection strategy, was capitalizing off of the Chicago riots, capitalizing
Right.
off of these uprisings, is how Nixon got one of the ways that Nixon got reelected. They were able to use that to stoke fear in white people. And so I think it was just a replay, in my opinion, that it was just a replay of
I
that.
agree. Yeah. And now they have, now they have your phones, they can track you. It's just like, because of the technology, it's even kind of more frightening.
But
Yeah.
I would just thank
I don't
you
know
for,
the answer. I don't know the answer because I certainly don't know. I just want to work. I work daily to try to stay, and I'm not always successful at it. I had a blue day yesterday. I was like, whoa, and I feel like I don't want to give up hope. I don't want to feel hopeless. I don't want to feel like we have no power, because we do. And I think ultimately, terrible shit's going to happen, but there is going to be, I mean, can we say, are we blowing ourselves up? Like, what is that thing they're putting across? They're putting like this thing across the ocean that's going to kill. What is it called? It's a telecommunications thing in the ocean that's going to affect all the wildlife. It's so terrible. It's like, and no one is waking up to it. We're going to have like whales and dolphins just wiped out and washing up on shore. We're killing the ocean. So once that happens, and yeah, I mean, I think if they can find out that they can make more money saving humanity than digging for oil, which is, by the way, they could if they were smart. Once they know how to monetize, climate change in a way that works for all of us, and it makes money, that's probably how it will go down if it ever happens.
Yeah. In the meantime, I'm less optimistic that they're going to, people who are making money off of this devastation, I'm less optimistic they're going to arrive at that conclusion by themselves without us forcing the issue, which is why I started with Susan Sarandon, the bank exit movement, which Jane and Catherine Keener also, I was very blessed to be able to organize Jane's 79th birthday bank exit action at Wells Fargo, which was very spicy. Were you there? Were you at that one?
Yeah, I ended up not being able to go because something, like, I don't know if I got sick. It was like the last minute.
Oh, it was very spicy though. It was like, it was Jane and Catherine and Francis Fisher.
I was there with yeah.
And Ed Begley was there, and it was but I mean, that was one of the first times we actually showed up. I think that was one of the first times that people showed up to a bank. Like,
what was the date of that?
That would have been her birthday in 2016, which I want to say was December 22nd to 2016.
Yeah.
And that became Defund Dapple. But I'm less optimistic.
I did a defund something. I did, going to because it was continuing. I went to Highland and they shut down Highland.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was there for one of them, but not the one with Jane that day. I was supposed to.
It was very nice. It was very spicy. She's mind-blowing person. She's so clear and powerful. She's a powerful leader, but she's also a powerful girlfriend. Like, she's happy to just be like, okay, let me know what's the plan. All right, great, we're gonna do this. And out, she's so clear and sharp. She's so razor sharp and powerful. Like, she just exudes power. Where do you think that comes from?
Lots of experience. Really getting in this time. She told me this was going to be the most powerful time in my life, and she was right. Getting in, reading, going inside herself, learning who she really is without a man, I mean, she was always a powerhouse, but she always had men, that she would give her power to. She no longer is willing to do that for anybody except, her children and her activism and, her work. which feeds her activism, of course.
But yeah, I think it's
I've been very blessed to have her as a friend, and blessed to have her as a an ally and a teacher and a mentor, you know. Cool. And she's you know, there's nobody like her, and she's got a big beautiful, she's an empath too, so she has a big beautiful heart, and she loves her girls, loves her girlfriends, and we all just bow down and listen.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any parting sort of your wish for the future? Like if you had a magic wand to wish, you know, what would be your wish?
Oh God, well, it would be that the people who are not getting it just have an awakening to save our democracy, save the planet, save women, save the children who are being trafficked. I mean, this is all that's the other thing, is like the drilling for oil is directly linked to also in these oil rigs, the women, Indigenous women that are disappearing,
missing
and being trafficked.
Indigenous women. Yeah.
It's horrible. And that's another part of the money. Like they're making money that way. Yeah. Through just hiding them there, or they can traffic children. It's disgusting. I think it's linked, and I think
it's definitely linked.
You know,
it's
I said that. I said, as they're raping the women, yeah, they're raping Mother Earth. I said it in Minnesota. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stop it there. It's been an incredible conversation. As I always love our conversations, because, you know, you're such a deep person. Like, you know, I don't do kind of small talk. And I just love that we're always able to talk about deep confronting things inside of ourselves. So I want to just say, I appreciate your courage, both as someone who has, you put yourself, your career, your body on the line for justice, but also you're not afraid to go do the inner work, you know, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate and see in you.
I mean, I think we all, you know, that's kind of like, I mean, you did ask me that good question about the end. What do I want for everything, for the world? I just wish we could get energetically back to a place of love and light, more than darkness and hatred. That's like, if we could do that, it will all be okay. It will. But there's so much at us, violence, and like and that's taking us all down. So we have to fight within ourselves not to like go in it, because believe you me, like I'm ready to, like, you know, like we're laying our lives down for this. Like, are you kidding me? And they don't care. They'll, you know, shoot us right there. They don't give a shit. Yeah. You liberal cunt. That's what they think.
Yeah. That's right. All right. I'm gonna